Is a video that will tell you all about Heritage Middle School's English Language Arts and Spanish Language Arts classes. So, the last few years, we have been engaged in some research and we are shifting our perspectives a little bit following the science of reading. So, if you're unfamiliar with the science of reading, it is essentially a body of research, it's from multiple fields, and these research studies use methods that confirm and disconfirm the theories of how children best learn to read. And so, here on this bit of research you're looking at, this is the reading rope. And you can see that there are many strands of reading that all weave together to create skilled readers. So down in elementary, they're beginning working on things like this, but the comprehension does start in elementary. It's all verbal. And as kids come up through the grades and including into middle school, the idea is that all of these strategies and skills are weaving together and becoming more and more strategic and increasingly automatic until we have skilled readers. So this is one piece of research we're following. Additionally, we are a dual language school. And so we follow research that supports biliteracy development as well. Here you can see the Spanish reading tapestry. And this is, quite similar to the reading rope. But as you can see, there is a couple of additions to it. So the translanguaging and the cross-linguistic connections are also included. There's a lot of oracy that happens. We want kids, not just in dual language classrooms, but in our English language arts. We want them speaking aloud with peers. But what's cool about this tapestry is that the writing is woven in. So it's a full literacy model here. So we were really using these two big pieces of research as we guided our way towards a new resource adoption that was selected last year. Actually, two new resource adoptions. So, in English Language Arts class, or ELA, we have chosen the Amplify ELA resource. And a little bit about Amplify is that our goals with Amplify are to develop critical reading, writing, and analytical skills. And we're going to do this through these three facets that you're seeing here. So, there is a diverse range of not only literary but also informational texts that will promote critical thinking and discussions. And even though there's a lot of rigorous text, Amplify offers so much opportunity for differentiation. So there are resources and strategies for meeting everybody's needs. And that way, all kids can access these complex texts and they can all have the supports that they needed. Additionally, Amplify has an amazing focus on writing. There are structured opportunities for students to develop their writing skills. There is an emphasis on argumentation, research, and creative expression. So, looking more closely at the core units, if you have a sixth grade student at Heritage Middle School, no matter if they're in English language arts or the dual language classroom, they will study these 5 core units. Here you can see just kind of a topic that is named, and here are the core texts that they will use. If you need an extra moment, you can pause this recording at any time and read through. I just want to point out that most of the units are excerpts from texts or a collection of texts, but in each grade level there is at least one full novel that is read, and in 6th grade it is The Summer of the Mariposas. In 7th grade, all students will be working on these core units. Very engaging across the board. Another reason we really loved Amplify, and it was selected by the team of teachers last year, is because of, the very engaging topics that comes through. Here is a list of the core texts that the 7th grade students will be looking at and reading. And in this case, A Raisin in the Sun is the complete novel that they will read. And then 8th graders will be working through these 5 units. Holocaust is always an 8th grade topic. It is part of the Illinois teaching standards. So we're really excited to try out some new resources around the Holocaust unit. And then here you can see the core texts for 8th grade. And really cool for 8th graders, they will read Chris Grimsley's Frankenstein, which is actually a graphic novel. So we're really looking forward to that. Now, if your child is in the AIMS sections of ELA, in addition to everything you just saw, they will also be engaging in some more novels. These are just a sampling of the texts that may be used with your students, and this isn't even exhaustive. There are more that could be possible. Some of these texts will be done with the whole class, and then others are part of book clubs where kids will have a choice and they could choose whichever book they want to read. So in addition to Amplify's core units, AIMS students will also be reading some of these novels as well. Now, in the dual language classrooms, we also have a new resource for Spanish language arts. And some key features to this new resource, it's called Galleria. Some key features of this curriculum is that the texts are culturally responsive. So there's a wide range of stories, poems, and informational texts. They celebrate cultural diversity, and they help students see themselves in the materials they study. Additionally, there is language development, so it is structured to support language acquisition and literacy skills for students, native languages, and it fosters bilingualism and biliteracy. And there is also, in this case as well, opportunities for differentiation. So kids can all work on the same text, but they can get different scaffolds and supports so that they can work through what they're working on. Now, Galleria is a little bit different. Here you're not going to see the text that students read, but instead you will see the thematic topics they will go through. So 6th graders, they will look at these different topics across the year. And then 7th grade has a different set of topics. And if you need another moment to read through this, feel free to pause the video at any time. And then finally, 8th grade will be digging into the topics that you see here on this slide. We're really looking forward to a great year here at Heritage. If you have any questions, we look forward to talking to you about them at our curriculum night this year. And if for whatever reason you can't make it, you can always shoot an email to your child's English language arts or Spanish language arts teacher. Thanks for listening.
This is a 7th grade math curriculum for Heritage Middle School. Our classroom expectations and overview. In this class, we do math together, share our understandings, connect and reflect on our practice, leave no one behind, and believe that everyone is a math person. The online platforms that are used in math class are ClassKick, which is accessed through an app, student.desmos.com, where students sign in with their Google password. That's the main hub of our math curriculum. iExcel, which is used for practice during PLT time and for skill development. And finally, Map Accelerator, which provides students with videos and extra practice on skills at their own skill level based on their MAP test scores. What to expect in each unit. Students will work on individualized skills during PLT time. This will be 20 minutes a day where students work on iExcel or Map Accelerator. Teachers will also be pulling small groups during this time. Students will also receive homework to complete from iExcel and other resources as assigned. Here are our unit breakdowns. Unit 1 is about scale drawings. Students will identify scale copies, find and use a scale factor, and interpret scale on maps and diagrams. This addresses Geometry Standards 1 and 6. Unit 2 is about introducing proportional relationships, determining when relationships are proportional, calculating constants of proportionality from a table, graph, equation, or written scenario, using equations to represent proportional relationships. This addresses our standards RP2 A through C. Unit 3 is all about circles. The students will calculate radius and diameter given constraints, develop formulas for circumference and area, and calculate area and circumference given certain constraints. This addresses Geometry Standard 4. Unit 4 is all about proportional relationships and percentages. So students will continue to calculate the constant of proportionality, equivalent rates and ratios, and find a scale factor. They'll divide with fractions to generate scale and unit rate, find percent increase and decrease, calculate tax, tip, markup, markdown, and commissions. This addresses standards RP1 and 3 and NS2D. Unit 5 is all about rational number arithmetic. Students will add, subtract, multiply, and divide with positive and negative whole numbers, decimals, and fractions, and they'll solve written problems and equations using all 4 operations involving fractions, decimals, and whole numbers. This addresses NS1, NS2, NS3, and EE3. In Unit 6, we start our journey in algebra with expressions, equations, and inequalities. Students represent scenarios using tape diagrams and equations. They know the similarities and differences between 2 forms of equations given here. They solve equations in both forms, and they write and solve inequalities. This addresses our expression and equation standards 1, 2, and 4. In Unit 7, we learn all about angles, triangles, and prisms. We identify when one, multiple, or no triangles can be formed given constraints. We use angle relationships to solve for missing angles. We describe and predict cross-sections of 3D objects, and we develop and use volume and surface area formulas. This addresses our geometry standards 2, 3, 5, and 6. In Unit 8, we talk about probability and sampling. We understand and use a variety of terms associated with probability, sampling, populations, and outcomes. We estimate probabilities. We represent sample space in tables, tree diagrams, and lists. We generate samples and describe strengths and weaknesses of different sampling methods. This addresses our SP standards 1 through 8. Here is our year at a glance. We have our 8 content units on the right-hand side. We have our 5 standard categories on the left-hand side. Those are ratios and proportions, number sense, expressions and equations, geometry, statistics, and probability. We look forward to chatting with you more about our curriculum here at Heritage Middle School at our curriculum night. Please feel free to ask your child's teacher any questions you may have about what they're learning, and we'll be happy to address them then.
This presentation will go over AIMS Math. 7th grade AIMS covers a combination of 7th and 8th grade material. Beginning in September, we will look at rigid transformations, incongruence, angles, triangles, and prisms. October, we'll look at scale drawings, then dilation, similarity, and introducing slope. November will be writing and solving equations and inequalities. And December, we'll look at linear relationships and systems of equations.
Hello, parents and guardians. Mr. Bertoletti, 7th grade social studies. I taught in Oak Park for 9 years in the 90s. I was then a textbook writer for 10 years. I came to Heritage in 2009. I've been here for 13 years. This is my 14th, and I enjoy it. What should the kids bring to class each day? Their 3-ring binder, which is where they keep their notes, something to write with, and always their iPad and headphones. Simple expectations each day. Bring all your materials, follow all the procedures, focus, and participate in the lesson. What is a typical lesson? There's some period of instruction, then the kids get some tasks to show their learning or understanding, and then they have a check-in with the teacher to see how they're doing. We do not give a lot of homework. It is usually something to have them prepare for assessments. If they don't do their homework, they get working lunch for the following week. Right? The 7th grade curriculum, it's a lot of civics and government, a little history, a little geography, a little economics. Here is the flow of units. We start out with a lot of civics and government. Current unit now is this forms of government. They learn about monarchies, dictatorships, democracies, theocracies, and some other types of government. We then move into a little bit of history. How did our country wind up having a republic form of government? We look at some causes that led to that. We then move into more civics and government. What are America's founding documents, and what do they say and do? So we'll look at the Declaration of Independence, see what that says, what are the big ideas, and same with the Constitution. The Constitution is the big kahuna in 7th grade. It is broken into 3 sections and therefore 3 subtests. We start out with a look at the Bill of Rights, and that's assessed in around mid-November. We move to a look at the preamble, which explains the goals of the Constitution, mid-December assessment for that. And then the larger section is about the branches and powers and checks and balances. That's assessed in early February. So the Constitution test is what I'd say cumulative. So it's 3 tests in one, but it's broken apart into 3 separate tests. So let's say the Bill of Rights test is about 25 questions, the preamble test is about 25 questions, the branches test is maybe 50 questions. These are not final numbers yet. We wind up with a total of 100 questions over the course of all 3 tests. To pass the overall Constitution test, you have to get X correct out of 100. We're still working on that. Passing the test is not a graduation or promotion requirement, but it is a Berwyn tradition, and we do hope everyone does it. There's a lot of content in this unit. I give a survey like this each year at the end of the year. Which social studies unit do you think you learned the most in this year? Each year it's the same, the Constitution. And which social studies unit do you think was the most difficult to learn or understand? It's always the Constitution. So it's a lot of learning, but most kids do fine. We then move to a little bit of history because it will be February. So a little Black history. What challenges have Black Americans faced and overcome? We start out with a little quick look at slavery, go all the way up to the Great Migration, and then analyze some data to draw some conclusions. We move to a brief economics unit. It's about supply and demand, how they affect the price of goods. Kids do a little buying and selling simulation that they've enjoyed. Move on to a bit of geography. How do you analyze and represent cultural and environmental characteristics? An easier way to say that is, can you understand this map or this graph? And so they do a lot of analyzing of different graphs and maps to figure out what they mean. As the 4th quarter comes along, we go back to history, a little look at causes and effects of Western expansion. Then a unit on Native Americans, specifically focused on the government policies that we've had toward them and how they were affected. So we'll start out with the early policies all the way up to today's situations. And the students will also analyze some data. If you have any questions, please email me. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
This will walk you through the 7th grade science curriculum for Heritage Middle School. Here's some classroom expectations. In science, students will need the following supplies brought with them every day to class. A composition notebook. This will serve as their lab notebook. This is where we put all of our notes, all of our written materials, all of our group work, our data from our hands-on experiments, and it's also where students draw diagrams as we learn about awesome science stuff. That composition notebook will stay in the classroom so that students do not need to transport it to and from class each time. They also need a folder so that they can put any papers that are handed to them in a safe place for keeping. This could be an accordion folder or a loose single folder, it doesn't matter. They also need their iPad, obviously fully charged every day, and a pen or pencil. Behavior expectations in science class align with the school-wide PBIS expectations. In general, students are expected to be responsible, respectful, and safe, to take responsibility for their own learning and not distract other students from being able to learn as well. And there is a big emphasis in science class on lab safety, which would be especially important during our chemistry unit. During our chemistry unit, we do use some pretty serious chemicals. Students are taught the appropriate way to use safety goggles and other lab safety equipment, as well as the appropriate way to interact and handle these types of materials. We use standard lab safety grade beakers and glassware, and students are expected to handle this stuff with maturity and to make sure that any accident is reported to the teacher immediately. Homework expectations. Usually student homework will be assignments that they begin in class but just do not complete. I find that students completing solo standalone assignments often go home and they are without me there to help them, and it can be difficult or impossible sometimes for students to complete those assignments. So 99% of the time, if students are working on something at home, you can be sure that they began that assignment at school and that it's just a continuation of what they already have been instructed and helped with. Obviously, studying for assessments is a big deal. Our curriculum is based in a program called Amplify, and the assessments are created by Amplify, so those assessments can be pretty challenging. I work with students all the time that are preparing for retakes or reassessments for those tests because they can be a challenge. So I would encourage students to study many days ahead and not wait until the night before the test. Also, extra help is always available. I'm always telling students they can ask me to come in early, they can stay late after school, or ask to come up during lunch to my room, and they can get extra help whenever they need it. Here's our year at a glance for 7th grade science. We do use, like I said, the Amplify Science curriculum. This is a district-purchased curriculum from the companies called Amplify Science. All the D100 middle schools, Heritage and Freedom, use the same curriculum. And so this is a standard curriculum for 7th graders attending District 100 schools. We start with Earth and Space Science. This includes geology and basic earth science. And then we get into plate motion. This is where we introduce the students to the concept that Earth's surface has changed over time, and we learn about how it's changed over time. Then we learn more specifically about the rock cycle and how rocks transform from one type to another, and how new rock is created, and also how rock is destroyed through erosion and weathering and things like that. When we start our chemistry unit, we start with thermal energy. This teaches the students the concepts of atoms moving around faster when they're heated up and atoms moving around slower when they're cooled down. Then we learn about phase changes from solids to liquids and gases and how that kind of relates back to thermal energy. And then we finish off kind of like the crown jewels of our 7th grade science curriculum is our chemistry unit. Our chemistry chemical reactions labs. Last year we did about 8 of them. I hope to do even more this year. Those are full class period long labs that are hands-on. They use legitimate chemicals that are purchased from science supply companies, and the kids really have a lot of fun and learn a ton by getting hands-on in the chemistry lab. And life science is how we finish up the school year. This is the first time some of our students have been introduced to basic biology concepts, and the two that we're going to hit really are population resources and matter and energy in the ecosystem, mainly how energy flows throughout the ecosystem. So that's kind of our year at a glance. Thanks very much.
Physical education expectations and overview. The PE curriculum that students will participate in include fitness activities, team sports, individual and dual activities, and team building. PE standards: participation in fitness activities with maximum effort, participation in movement skills to the best of your ability, showing positive sportsmanship. The objective of the PE program is to increase student growth and development by guiding them into becoming healthy lifelong learners through a common curriculum. This incorporates physical, mental, emotional, and social health within the physical education setting.
Health expectations and overview. The health programs from McGraw-Hill engage students in exploration of health and wellness. Hands-on activities and real-world applications of health skills provide the students with the understanding they need to create a personal plan for a healthy life. Health content: nutrition, tobacco, drugs, and alcohol. Our guest speakers will be from Sarah's Inn to talk about healthy dating and relationships. Corazon will also come in to talk about sex education and human development. A permission slip will be required.
In 7th grade music, we have the goal to develop a musical style and taste by listening to a variety of music genres. We'll review the fundamentals of music that we learned in 6th grade, including rhythms and pitches. We'll compose melodies and harmonies, adding on that second layer of harmonies. And we'll learn song form for both pop music and classical music with examples from our students. Some examples of our standards are to identify music notation, compose rhythmic and melodic phrases, and identify reasons for selecting music based on musical characteristics, interest, or purpose. The 4 criteria for our standards in music class are creating, performing, connecting, and responding.
These are the basic expectations and overview of 7th grade art. During this time period, students build on the foundational concepts that we covered in 6th grade art, the elements of art, and continue moving on to the principles of art or design. Some examples on the next slide would be those of either a Pokemon cartooning project or a toy still life. This quarter, we started with a shading and value project where they were able to pick any kind of item and draw over it, and we worked on value scales. We will be doing some kind of technical drawing. Generally, we do 1-point perspective or isometric drawing. And then we try to do at least one painting project. Generally, we work in tempera for that. Every day, students should be bringing their pencil and iPad. Occasionally, they are asked to bring in other supplies, but I always give them a heads up way in advance before that happens. I ask that they're ready to learn and be challenged by new concepts and skills, and that they would just give their best effort. And eventually, we have 4 final projects that are generally done or due, every quarter. Thank you.
Seventh grade Spanish is a 1-quarter course in which students will begin learning the basics of speaking, listening, reading, and writing in Spanish. And students will focus on Spanish vocabulary, grammar, and they'll begin conjugating verbs. And the standard for this class is to engage in conversations, understand written language, and present on a variety of topics.
In 7th grade social justice, we will work to become more aware of the problems that face our world so we can develop solutions. This year, students will take social justice to a new level. They will work with their classmates to develop an action project. They will need to work together to understand problems, recognize their own power to create change, and develop their plan of action. We are stronger when we work together, and this year students will see the incredible outcome of their collective effort.
7th grade band is a pull-out class where students are borrowed from their exploratory class once a week for 45 minutes. They build upon their beginning band skills that they learned when they first started in 6th grade. They are continuing to learn, read, recognize, and perform music on their instruments at a higher level, and they also are gaining an appreciation for instrumental music. The standards covered are identifying music notation, performing various pieces of music, and evaluating performances by oneself and others. A great way you can help your student at home is by encouraging them to practice at least 20 minutes a day.
STEAM stands for science, technology, engineering, art, and math. The main goal in STEAM is to promote problem-solving skills that apply to the real world by collaborating with their peers. Students will focus on the next generation science standards for engineering and design. In 7th grade STEAM, students will participate in the Energy and Environment Project Lead the Way program. Students will learn about energy and create prototypes for alternative energy.